Merry Christmas, everyone, and welcome to CommanderCast episode 304. We're your weekly source for community, strategy, and technology, hosted on CommanderSociety.com and our home site, CommanderCast.com. And this week, we are ringing in the holidays with a special guest. Steve, could you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Hey, my name is Steve Johnson. I am a writer and an EDH League organizer, and I want to thank you guys for bringing me on CommanderCast. I'm looking forward to talking about some of the stuff I've been doing for the past few years.
Yeah, anytime. Community this week. Yeah, community this week. We're going to talk a little about Steve and his blog and some of the cool things he's been doing in the community, and then we're also going to talk about some EDH League things this week. So it's going to be kind of like last week when you guys listened to me just kind of talk to two people who knew things, because I don't know anything about EDH leagues, but someone who does is Adam.
Yeah, I do. This is Adam. I am coming to you without cultural appropriation like Mark. I'm going to say happy holidays, not just Merry Christmas.
Oh, fine. I mean, it is. This show is actually coming out on Christmas Day, so
I feel like it's almost the theme now, where I give a little tiny stab at your intro. But
I like that. That's fine. I mean, in general, my ego probably needs to get taken down a notch, so that's okay. Yeah.
So yeah, glad to be here. Good to talk about leagues. Yeah, we do a local league also, at least once a year. Sometimes we'll do it twice a year if we kind of get a good idea for something. But yeah, it'll be an interesting conversation. I love doing them.
Yeah. So this week, folks, we're gonna try and ring out 2017 with a league that didn't suck, unlike Justice League. So stick with us. Keep up with the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, and then stick with us after the break, and we'll talk to Steve about all the cool things he's doing in community. I'm sorry if I offended any Justice League fans out there.
I don't know what a Justice League fan is.
Well, I haven't seen it yet, so.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah.
I
saw Star Wars last night.
It was pretty much hot trash. I mean, not as hot trash as Suicide Squad, so.
I heard Superman's mustache is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, think about just that sentence alone is enough of an indictment for a movie for me. Don't you think?
Yeah.
You know? But hey, whatever. It's DC. I don't know. And it's only a matter of time until Disney buys them too. So then the singularity will come, will be complete. In community this week, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about Steve and his cool blog, Commander Ruminations. So, Steve, can you tell us a little bit about what you do, how you got the blog started, how you came to be a content creator in the Magic world?
Sure. Okay, well, I guess I'll start at the beginning. No, I won't start at the beginning. But in 1993, when Magic first came out, I was just out of college, and I could have gotten into Magic, but I didn't know what I was missing, and I jumped into LARPing. And I was really involved in an amazing LARP in New England called The Realms for 2 decades, and learned an incredible number of things and met amazing people and shaped me as a person. But after many years, I had a kid, got married, and they weren't as interested in the LARPing, and I sort of moved away from it. I got into Minecraft because my kid was interested in Minecraft, and after a while, I got into video creation, made some videos, had a channel for a while, didn't make it big, but had a lot of fun. And then he got, my kid got less interested in Minecraft and eventually got interested in EDH and Magic the Gathering. And, whenever I get into anything, I always get deep into it. So I started playing, got into it, started building decks, got beat a lot, lost a lot of games, and eventually got into writing and started up a blog. So I've always been a content creator, and I've always been interested in writing and, making stuff, not just playing. So it was sort of a long and winding road. And last year I started up the Commander Ruminations blog as a place to put artwork that's another topic entirely, and also just random ruminations, thoughts, deck lists, discussions, and I did it for a year, trying to prove to myself that I could actually create content for a year, and had a lot of fun, put some really good stuff up there. put some not so good stuff up there. Got my fair share of trolling, some deserved. And this past year, I reached out to some websites, and I've been picked up by GatheringMagic.com. So
Awesome.
starting in January, actually starting now because I started last week, I'm being published there. So it's very exciting.
nice.
Oh man, congratulations! I did not know that. Wow, you're like
Thank
breaking
you.
that exclusive right here on the air. I'm gonna have to now. I have to go. Another good reason to follow GatheringMagic.com.
It's big news for me. It's proof to me that putting a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of work into something does pay off. But you got to reach out to, you got to put yourself out there and say, hey, I've got this thing. You want to pick me up? And, someone said yes.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, hey, I mean, you're in good company because Carlos is still over there at Gathering Magic. Yep. So, now, Steve, with your blog with Commander Ruminations, is there any specific focus you have, or is it just kind of like catch as catch can? Like, what are you trying to do with the blog, but I was just wondering if there's any particular aspect of Magic that you really kind of hone in on.
The first year was mostly proving to myself that I could create regular high quality content. And I think I did that. One of the things I try to do is explore topics and ideas without actually posting a full deck list. That's something I like to do. And that sounds weird because everyone's all about, here's my list. Look at my list. Isn't it amazing? You should build this deck. Mm-hmm. And I really like deck building, but I really like having people express themselves with their deck and have their own unique flavor to it. So a lot of my articles, probably half of them that have discussions of commanders, aren't actually build this deck. They're more, this is how I would go about it. These are some of the good cards for these reasons. And then at the end, it's not linked to this deck. It's, take this information and make your own thing and make it amazing.
Now, do you generally try to, maybe find a couple synergies that really work well, or maybe talk about the theme of the deck in general, or just a strategy, or maybe some neat things that might go...
Absolutely. I recently wrote one about Anna Fens of the Foremost as an exercise in trying to build Abzan vampires, which is not the best idea ever, but it was fun to take that concept and build in some recursion with Patriarch's bidding and like Living End and Living Death, but also use the green to ramp and get mana dorks out that aren't available in black and white. So, I generally do try to dive into strategy, and I've actually had a fair number of separate posts just about philosophy and about, the idea of different ways to approach Commander and different ways to approach different strategies. So it really runs the gamut. Very
cool. Hey, before we go any farther, though, the first thing I noticed, and the first thing I think anyone would notice if they go to Commander Ruminations, is the artwork. Which is amazing, folks. I have a separate link up there just for the Imager files for that, but you can also see it on Steve's blog. Steve, tell me, what is the genesis of this cool mashup between classical paintings and magic art?
That was actually one of the things that led me to start doing the blog. And we'll have to make sure that link's right, because I think that link may be outdated, but I'll get a new one up for you like tomorrow.
Sounds good.
That'll be right. The artwork was the genesis of me looking at Commander cards and thinking, wow, wouldn't it be great to go to a thrift store, like a Salvation Army or whatever, and buy some of those junky old, oil paintings and take them home and then have the skill to be able to paint, a Tarmogoyf into it, or, stick a, Bloodfire Colossus in the background or something. And I don't have that kind of painting skill, but I've been using Photoshop since like 1991. So, because I'm old. So, the blog in part was an excuse for me to do something I always really wanted to do, which was take classic paintings, which are in the public domain, so I don't need to worry about paying someone, money for using it for my hobby, and grabbing artwork from Magic cards, which isn't in the public domain, but I consider it fair use since I'm not making any money off of it, and sort of marrying the two, making really interesting, neat, and weird composites of the art from the card, plus some sometimes familiar, sometimes completely unfamiliar classic painting from, the turn of the 18th, 19th century.
Yeah, I mean, just to give, I know this is the worst format possible to talk about paintings. However, just to give you an idea of this, to paint the word picture for you, everyone's seen Nighthawks by Edward Hopper. It's an old picture of New York City street at night with a diner. And you've taken the guy from Rowdy Crew and Jace from Vryn's Prodigy and inserted them into the painting. I think Jace is at the counter, and Rowdy Crew is on the roof, if I'm getting it right.
That's one of my favorites. Rowdy Crew is in the diner, gathered around the end of the diner, looking at a map. And Jace is sort of standing there, looking like Jace. And then there's a person sort of hanging off the side of the wall by a rope. And then there's a dinosaur in the background. So it's this whole mashup of Ixalan stuff.
I did miss the dinosaur in the background.
Yeah, it's right there. It's sort of, you can see it if you look at the pane of glass.
Oh, yeah, and you can, man, you even took the time to change the name of the diner to Ixalan.
Yeah, we got it right.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. In fact, when I wrote you guys to see if I could come on the podcast, I think I sent you a particular image that was a painting of Bathsheba taking a bath on the roof of a building in some medieval, I don't even know. I'm not an art history major. I just like good art. Do you remember this picture I sent you?
Yep, I'm looking at it right now with Archfiend of Ifnir in the background.
So she's standing there on top of this building, buck naked, beautiful, nicest ass you'll ever see. And, her handmaid is helping her, is like down by a water basin. In the background is a picture of the Archfiend of Ifnir. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
And he's looking towards the viewer. And because Bathsheba's in the foreground, like buck naked, it looks like he was like, hey, who's that? Check that out. It looks like he was like busy destroying the town and then saw this gorgeous babe on top of this building. And it's like, damn, look at that. So try to have fun with it.
Definitely. I mean, one of my favorites is the one right at the top where it's, oh God. Who am I forgetting? The giant spaghetti monster.
Emrakul.
So it's Emrakul over the Venice Grand Canal.
That's one might be my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really cool ones. Some range for the startling to the subtle and like everything in between. It's very cool. One of the coolest little mashups of things that I've seen in a long time. So do yourself a favor, folks. The link will be correct by the time this show goes up. And if you do nothing else, like definitely check out that art, but also check out the blog too. Now, we kind of went over, how you came up to be a content creator. Steve, before we move on, what do you think is, I'm not going to say your responsibility as a content creator, but what do you get out of making content for the community? Like, you take so much time and effort to, make these gorgeous art mashups and put your articles now on Gathering Magic. What is it you get personally out of doing all this?
Well, I mean, when I went to college, I got a degree in comparative literature, which is incredibly useful in the real world, let me tell you. And, but I love writing and I love, I'm just a fan of, it's hard to say. I mean, basically for years in the LARPing, I was one of the biggest creators of written content, and generally nonfiction about how to LARP, how to make weapons, the foam padded swords, all that stuff. I wrote books on how to hold events, booklets on how to hold events. And so that sort of just carried over to this new hobby where I'm enjoying writing about, how to create decks, how to, set up a league. And for me, it's really trying to help the community become a stronger place. And I enjoy the back and forth and the discussion about strategies and about cards, and I learn stuff from people. And, someone posts about, I've got this Narset deck, and I'm able to go, you should run Penance because you've never heard of this card, but it lets you drop something on top of the library. Narset can flop into it. And then if someone tries to do wheel effects, you can just drop everything you want to keep on top of your library. And that sort of back and forth and sort of teaching and mentoring and also learning from other people is really what attracts me to content creation and to writing, because it's a two-way street if you do it right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's, and for a minute, sometimes I think of this in terms of, this is how old I am. I think of it in terms of the old zine scene,
God, yeah.
Yeah, like the late 80s, early 90s, like before the internet was a thing. And, people would create these packages of cool media, whatever it was. Like there was a big punk scene around my area. It was, that was what we usually kind of glom together. And it creates this little community around itself. So, we have the Commander Cast community, you have a Commander Ruminations community, Gathering Magic community. And just that shared, that shared interest in a cool thing, I think is especially what draws people to Magic in general. But then like when you have that extra added layer of now that content, or now because of the internet, like that back and forth, with creators and consumers of your content. Like I don't know, it's very rewarding personally, but I always like to ask, what other content creators get out of it. It seems similar across the board, but it's just fulfilling on a different level, right?
Well, also for the format, I find Commander to be particularly, engaging because it's got that social side to it. It's not just, 2 decks mano a mano, the best deck wins. It's got this extra layer that's just incredibly nuanced. You've got all these interactions you have between your opponents, and games can turn on things that would never occur in a single player, one-on-one game. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what makes the community such a huge thing to me.
Yeah, I mean, that is what makes Commander special, right? Like, it's more than just the competition. You can go other places if you want that, because, I guess for lack of a better term, it's that spirit of the community and that spirit of the format that draws people in and really keeps them there, because it fulfills a niche that, other aspects of this game do not, but like, for the people who want it, like, right on top of it.
So you're saying you're supposed to pay attention to the other people at the table?
Well, you can if you choose to.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
I like kind of sitting here and letting them do their own thing while I win. That seems like a much better strategy.
I mean, hey, I just like making tokens, man. So I mean, I count it as a win, no matter how badly I lose, if I made the most tokens.
Fair enough.
Some of the most fun I have is, sometimes your back's against the wall, and if someone else at the table decides that you're dead, you have no way to stop them. So you jump into politics mode, and you're like, okay, I'm dead on your turn. What can I do? Stay alive. Let's make a deal. I will help you in every way possible. And sometimes you wind up winning those games because you manage to maneuver your way into someone's good graces, and then suddenly they're dead. You're still in. It's the best thing about the format, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's the upside. It's the upside of collusion. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
it can get more salt that way, but still. It's fun.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the nice part, right? Like, as long as you got a good group of people, you shuffle up, you play again. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, if you colluded against me in the previous game, like, you are my number one target this game. But hey, like, maybe 2 games down the road, by that time I will have forgotten about it. And eventually the salt makes its way equally around the table to like an equally seasoned game, I guess. Like, that works out.
There's a big difference between playing with friends and playing for free, and playing in a situation where, you put $20 in and you're just pissed. Because, and that's why I really advocate trying to keep the games free, keep the games fun. And if someone, combos off turn 3, you're not out $10.
Yeah.
You're going to get an extra game in. No big deal.
It's almost as if creating an EDH league would be a good use of your time and a well-spent community activity. Huh.
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
Well, look at that.
I should try that.
I feel like maybe we can delve into that conversation a little bit more.
I don't know whether or not I think that's the smoothest or least smooth transition I've ever made between topics. But I'll just let that ambiguity hang in the air, like a nice little Christmas wreath. So with that in mind, folks, is there anything else we want to talk about for community before we slide into leagues and the strategy behind them?
I'll just throw out that as a content creator, I'll tell anyone else that's interested in writing or producing content, go for it, do it, put your time into it, but don't ever get the idea that you're not going to screw up things, because I've screwed up more stuff on my blog this past year, I can't even tell you. And you just got to keep on forging ahead, make apologies if you mess something up, and do your best.
Exactly, yeah. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, stick with us after the break. We're going to come back and talk about strategy behind designing and implementing a Commander League. Stick with us. But interstitial already. Yay, strategy. In strategy this week, folks, we already tipped our hand in community, so you should have seen this coming. We're going to talk about designing and implementing EDH leagues, which is something I know...
Whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah, I know. It's totally off the top of my head. But, we could have talked about Rampage this week. So who knows?
And see, that's where we should be. Yeah. I love League. I'm actually very excited to talk about this.
Well, that's good because much like last week, well, I just sat in the background and listened while two people who know way more than me talked about stuff. Hey, Adam, let's talk about EDH leagues, specifically like how to design and implement them. Now, Steve, you've written an amazingly comprehensive guide to this, which I linked to on the site. In fact, it's a whole section under your blog.
Yep.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do to kind of put into, to create an EDH league, whole cloth out of nothing?
Sure. First off, now is the time because we're heading into January soon. And if you jump on it now, you get to have a full year of your league, which is great if you do it the way I happen to do mine. Last 2 years ago, we started in February, and it always bothered me that our first year was only 11 months. So that aside, the thing to know about EDH leagues is there's a lot to know, but I guess I'll try to hit upon the major topics. You want to find a good site that's public and accessible to people. If you can get them to allow you to do it for free, that's really, really important. And we can get to why later, but you can convince your LGS owner that having a free EDH league where you handle all the the point totals and all that good stuff, and there's no prizes, it's just for bragging rights in the store. What you're going to do is you're going to create a community of players that are invested in being at that store. And I would think any LGS owner worth their salt would understand that that's actually a really good thing. They've got their modern night, they've got their standard night. It's another way to get people who are invested in the store, consider it their home store, and will go out of their way to buy stuff there. So keeping it free is a huge part. Keeping it consistent. Make sure that people know when it's going to fire. So if you're doing your EDH league on ours is Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Next Gen Comics in Pelham, New Hampshire. Sorry, I had to throw that in there. Then, people will be able to count on it, and they'll know, this is when you go and when you can play, and you'll get better attendance that way if it's not just loosey-goosey schedule and, sort of random. And, keep it fair. Make sure the rules aren't too complicated. There's a lot of stuff going into it, and we'll cover all that. But that's sort of the basics. And the last thing I'll throw out there is that my starting up an EDH league was in some ways very selfish. I've got a wife and a kid, and I can't just go to my LGS all the time and hope that there are people to play Commander with. So what I wanted to do, in part, was form a community, but also in part make sure that when I went to the LGS, I'd get some games in. So if I can set up a schedule and plan it out ahead of time and say, okay, guys, we'll run the league here during these hours, I know every week I can get some games in. So it's a little selfish on that level because I'm guaranteed to get my games in because I know that there's a league, and I know there's a league because I'm running it.
So it's interesting because the way that you talk about running your league is a little bit more what I would consider the traditional sense of doing it. If we go in the way back machine, I don't know if either of you guys remember, I think around 96, 95, Magic actually sponsored an arena league that was standard based at LGSs. And that's where I first became interested in it. And it was a lot like what you're saying in that, the LGSs could actually build up a community of people who played on consistent days, and it was competitive. And they did have a buy-in, but it was like, $10 for the season instead of, $10 each day or something like that. And it brought new people into it, which is different from how my play group runs our league. Mm-hmm. We are a league out of our houses. And so we're not, necessarily settled in an LGS. We're not adding new people to it. It's kind of an invite only type thing. And yeah, so it's a little bit different, spin on it, but I do
absolutely.
Yeah. But I do like what you're saying about, if you don't have a community that consistently gets together at their LGS, or you don't have a solid play group that you're playing with all the time, starting a league through a store is a fantastic idea.
Well, one of the things it gives you is the opportunity to play against decks you'll never have seen if you just play with your friends. Right. I have friends that join me at our house, and play twice a month. But it's just casual games. We don't call it a league, maybe because I already have a league running. And I see the same decks again and again and again with that group, and they're great, and I love them. I love them dearly, but I really like playing in the league format where anyone could walk in. Someone could walk in and rock our world with a turn 3 tier 1 deck, or come in with Feldergriff Chaos, and every week it's just a new surprise.
Oh man, that is a really good point. The sheer variety you get from just playing with some random folks. This is almost like structured randomness, I guess. Because like you don't know what decks are going to play. Like the structure of the games and the setting and the times are very laid out ahead of time. So that makes for the consistency. But the variability in the decks is a cool thing I guess I hadn't really considered before. But that definitely, that makes me that makes everyone a better deck builder, I think, just because you're thrown up against a bunch of different scenarios, and you might find a couple cool bits of hidden tech that you've never seen before. So absolutely. Yeah. I also really like variety. Like my family orders pizza every Friday night. I can't get the same pizza twice in a row. I just really like having things change up. I just like that different experiences. And another thing to keep in mind is if you play in a public place where people can drop in, yeah, you're going to get the occasional jerk. That's going to happen, but you're also going to meet people you never would have met. I've got friends right now that I just love seeing every week, and I might not have met them if I hadn't met them through League. Yeah, there you go. Now, I guess to just kind of move the conversation along a little bit, Steve, what I really liked, you had emailed me this before, but your 10 discussion points about what not to do when setting up a point system. I think that's almost more important to talk about on our end, because like the comprehensive guide you set up is great, but I think the 10 discussion points that you laid out are really good for people to have in mind as they're reading your guide in case they want to put their own spin on it, etc. Because these are things like you have your experience, you have years of doing this. These are things that obviously the people who are starting up a league might not think of ahead of time. So let's run down through those. When you say don't let your point system, because I'm guessing that's the backbone of any good league, don't let your point system become unnecessarily complicated. What do you mean?
Well, I've seen some point systems where I look at it and my eyes just start swimming because, there's 50 different point categories that you can get for things that are honestly just really obscure and weird. And you could see going through 20, 30 games and not having them come up. So if you have it really complicated, in my opinion, what you get is the situation where someone comes into the league, looks at it for the first time, and they might just walk away because they're like, what the hell is this? How am I going to catch all this stuff in the middle of my game? If I miss one, I miss a point. It's just too much. So keeping it streamlined and succinct and, brief, but still nuanced enough to be fun and interesting is a really good balancing act to try to learn to do. But don't go too far on the side of making a million different dumb points that are never going to be used. I
think a good example of that is, and I love this guy's content, but we tried his point system and it was just a mess. Was the professor? The professor had a point system video back in the day, and you basically like had all these cards that you would print out, and there were like 150 of them, they would all have like point goals, and they were for different colors. So like some of them were negative, and some of them were positive, and some of them were attributed to you specifically as a player, and like and you dealt them out at the beginning of the game. So there was variance in the points, which is nice because it goes away from farming, but there were so many to keep track of that it was just an absolute nightmare to employ, in my opinion.
Sure.
And we went away from that very quickly.
And that brings us to our next do not, which is don't make it come across as being overly random.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, if you've got a system where you never know what's going to come up or what point totals you're going after, I mean, how do you build a deck for that? You can try to build a deck that's sort of broad ranged and will do a lot of things, but it does not reward the effort that goes into actually preparing for your games. And EDH is a lot about preparation. It's a lot about planning and figuring out how to make your deck function and how to make it, work well and do the things you want it to do. And you're basically throwing all that out the window, and that's no good for anybody.
Now, for the next part, you talked about don't let your point system include unrealistic categories. What do you mean by that? Can you give me an example of an unrealistic category?
Sure. This past September, I think, I played a Zedru deck, and at one point in one of the games, I was able to play Enchanted Evening and Aura Thief and then kill Aura Thief.
Yes.
Which was amazing. And I actually won by playing the turn after playing Leveler and hitting it with Fractured Identity. So it was like one of those games I'll remember forever.
Yeah.
That's one of those games where if there was a point category for gain control of all permanents on the board, I'd be able to check it off. And
Right.
making a point system, you could think, oh, that's a great point category. We'll make it worth 10 points. But it's never going to happen. I've seen it happen once in 2 years. And I was the one that did it because I specifically went after it. But if you have point categories that are basically unrealistic, they're never going to happen or almost never going to happen, they're taking up space on your sheet. And what's going to happen is people are going to look at the sheet and think it's just too much. It's too complicated. They're not going to be able to remember them all. It's overwhelming. So if you're cutting things out, cut out the ones that are not happening very often. And in our league, we've actually, over time, we make new categories. And then if it's not being used and I go for a month or two without anyone getting those points, we'll throw them out the window. Just, don't need that anymore.
Are you worried at all that like certain unrealistic categories, like the gain control of all permanent one, are you worried that might skew deck building across the league? Or
I think it could, but those ones are often in leagues or systems where things are kind of random anyways.
okay, so like even if people are building specifically for league play, like they probably won't build for the leveler strategy.
Exactly. They might not. But if you have some really wonky, weird, this thing is worth so many points because it's amazing and it never happens, maybe you shouldn't have it on your point sheet.
Yeah, fair point. Now, when you say don't let your point system intrude upon gameplay, what do you mean by that?
Well, in our league right now, we have a point sheet that we have with us, and as we play, we generally check things off. So we have a thing called tub thumping, which is a reference to the old Chumbawamba song. I get back down, I get knocked down, but I get up again. So each time you cast your commander, you get a tub thumping point, and up to a maximum of 3 for your, for the game. And, you do a little tick mark on the sheet to just track it, but it's not that intrusive. You do it and you put the sheet away. But you're not constantly having that sheet in front of you, writing numbers down and tracking stuff. You can basically just mostly leave it to the side. And if you have a system that's really, really complicated and basically requires the sheet to be there all the time, then it's about the sheet. It's not about the game. And you want the game to be EDH. You want it to be, as much of an EDH game as you can with a point system sort of laid on top of it.
Steve, if I had a point system for Commander Cast, I would give you a +1 for best Chumbawamba reference.
Oh, it's a good band.
Yeah.
A weird band, but a good band.
Hey, whatever. I mean, if Commander Cast is anything, we are just unabashedly Gen X nostalgia cast half the time, so don't worry about it.
You'll love my Eye of the Tiger reference thing.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at this.
Technically, I'm a millennial, not Gen X.
Oh, well, we can't. I'm sorry, Adam. We have to break up. I didn't know. That's
I was born in the 60s,
so,
although only by like a month, so,
Well, hey, when we talk about ruling out certain strategies, or don't let your point system rule out certain strategies, as I was looking through the PDF you shared with me about your point system here, I think you did this really elegantly. You neatly solved, and I'll say solved because I'm assuming this works out well, a problem that Commander players have been bitching about literally since the beginning of this cast, and probably before. Your poison count is 13, if I'm reading this right.
Oh, that's correct.
Yeah, tell me about the genesis of that.
Sure. So on a higher level, just ruling out strategies means you don't want to have your system make it impossible to play stacks or impossible to play combo or impossible to play infinites or whatever. You want to have EDH, BDH. As for the infect specifically, we started at 15, and that happened before the next gen league started. We actually started a league up in a store called Myriad Games in Salem, New Hampshire, and it's closed down now. They just have a location in Manchester. And in our first month of league, I actually wrote up their first score system because they were talking about starting up league. And I said, hey, let me give you a draft of some ideas. You can take it and run with it and change it and do whatever you want with it. I wasn't running it. It wasn't up to me, but I wanted to help. And they looked at it and they loved it. And they just used it as is. And I made a Skithiryx deck. And this is actually the genesis of my making cookies every week also. I made a Skithiryx deck, which is Skithiryx the Blight Dragon, who's a 4/4 infect flyer. You can pay black to give it haste. It's basically the bane of everyone who hates infect. They just hate that card as well. They should. Skittles, absolutely. So I built the Skithiryx deck, And going into League, I felt bad because I was like, I want everyone to have fun. I don't want to be like that jerk that kills everyone with Infect, but I wanted to play the deck. So I said, guys, let's make Infect be 15 because it shouldn't be twice as high because the cards don't scale up from standard, from other formats, 20 life formats to 40. The cards don't scale up. So you don't want to go twice, but you don't want to leave it at 10 because it's just not fun. I feel like it's right to bring it up a little bit. So we went to 15. And recently, maybe 3 months ago, in the Next Gen League, we voted to bring it from 15 down to 13. And then last month, I put on the vote sheet, because we vote every month on rules changes. We put on the vote sheet to change it from 13 down to 10. That failed. And so I think we're at a really good point. 13 is high enough that you're not one-shot killed without a little extra effort from a Blightsteel Colossus, but it's not so high that it's impossible to win. And I won a bunch of games in August with Ramos Dragon Engine, making him huge, giving him Infect, and hitting him with Chandra's Ignition. So, and Triumph of the Hordes works really well too. You can still win with Infect, but it's not so high that it's ridiculous and no one bothers to use it.
Very cool. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to try and play around next time. Not that I play Infect an awful lot, but I'm going to try playing around with that and see what's going on. That's a neat way to solve that. That does kind of fall. It seems like it falls into that like Goldilocks sweet spot,
I think so.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. The one thing that my group does not typically do, there's literally like one occasion I can think of, is derivate from the rules committee. It's something that's suggested even by them. To kind of modify the rules of EDH to the point that it works for your play group. And so changing something like, kind of so fundamental that's literally printed on the card, for Infect, or for poison counters is very interesting.
Well, I've got a lot of respect.
Do you guys make a lot of modifications or?
No, not at all. I actually have a lot of respect for people that want to just stay to the RC's strictures. And that's awesome. And if it works for you, that's fantastic. I tried to get them to allow the cards that say 10 poison counters to change the count for that game if it was on the table to 10. They didn't go for that because, we voted on it and, you do what the group wants to do.
Sure.
I didn't mention the cookie connection, which is that month where I ran Skittles and had a 15 poison count for the league just from the beginning. I actually baked sugar cookies with Skittles in them, in part as my way to say, guys, I'm sorry I'm doing this to you, but here, have some cookies. They were weird because they had Skittles in them, but they were tasty. And ever since, I've been making cookies every week for our league, in part as a way to try to keep salt down. So if you're playing from 2 to 7 and someone skips lunch, and they're going to be cranky. And if they've got a bad game, I want to put something in their belly, give them a chance to maybe, have some blood sugar going on so they're not quite as moody as they might be if they skip their meals and got
he
bad.
seems like a much nicer guy than me, because if I were going to do that, I would probably hand somebody a cookie when they got salty, and it would be the saltiest cookie that you've ever put in your mouth.
I like that, actually.
Just to troll them a little bit.
Running a league when you run a league, you're the face of the league. And if you're the face of the league, you have a huge impact on whether people stay or not.
Right.
If they show up and you're running tier 1 decks in an atmosphere where everyone else is playing precons or, mid-range decks, and you're just a jerk and you're reveling in every victory and rubbing it in when people lose, you think people are going to stay? Not so much.
Yeah.
So it's important if you're going to organize a league to really value your role as the person running the league. And what that means. I actually won the top point total last year in our league, but I was there every week. And, when we did our awards, because we do awards at the end of each year, I told them, guys, this is not an impressive thing, but, y'all should try to unseat me next year. And we also did an award for the highest average point total. And I told them this is the impressive thing. These people are great players. I'm good. People try to kill me because they don't want to leave me around because I'll do something dumb like give Ramos Infect and hit it with Chandra's Ignition. But, the real impressive thing is the high averages when you look at it from the point of view of the organizer, because you're going to be there every single week.
So I wanted to go through, you mentioned the tub thumping one, but I kind of wanted to go through and, take the rulers out, so to speak. And compare point systems, because you're using some things that I've not seen in action before, and and I have some that are different than yours that we've agreed upon. Our point system is essentially a slightly modified version of what Commander Versus uses in their normal seasons.
I've watched the Command Zone game nights, but I haven't watched the Commander Versus. So I apologize for that.
Yeah.
I should.
No. I mean, they have a pretty basic one, but let's go through all your different categories. So we talked about tub thumping, which is recasting up to 3 times, right? Is what it says.
Currently, it's up to 3 times.
Okay.
Next year, we're going to have theme months where if your commander is on theme, your tub thumping is doubled.
Oh, okay. And so in our league, we have something close to this, but I think you can earn significantly fewer points doing it. If you cast your commander 4 or more times, you get 1 point.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So, I mean, same thing. Like, if you've got that persistence for throwing that guy out there, go for it.
No, absolutely.
Your next one that you have listed is First Blood, which you have a really nice spin on it that I've actually talked about with my play group, but we've never gotten to this point. So you want to talk about First Blood?
Oh, sure. So First Blood is just a category for 1 extra point if you get the first combat damage in a game, and 1 extra point for the first non-combat loss of life. It used to be non-combat damage, and that was changed because loss of life is just broader.
Right.
And it's a way to reward those decks that come out fast, because sometimes the decks that come out fast aren't actually the strong ones. And it's just nice to have a variety of ways to get points from the normal gameplay. And it provides incentive for sort of getting a little chunk of someone out early. So, drop a turn 1 hasty, boom, get that point.
It's like extending the Olive Blanche to Boros players.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the interesting thing. So First Blood is one of the ones we have, but we only have the combat damage. We don't have the non-combat damage. And I've actually mentioned it before of like, well, okay, so if you play a 1/1 haster, is that any different than me bolting you? So like, why shouldn't I get? And so we've stayed away from it, but the conversation has been there. I will say First Blood is one of the ones that I find people that changes the way that people build decks more than most of the other point.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you'll make a point to add something extra just in case it comes up.
Right. It lowers people's curve in general. Like people start adding 1, 2, 3 drops a little bit more than they usually would in EDH, from my experience. I
also like having a system where the system itself rewards good deck building as opposed to creating excuses for bad deck building.
Yeah, fair enough. So your next one listed is Red Shirt. Tell us about that.
Sure. Red Shirt is just, it's like a pity point. If you're the first one knocked out, sometimes I've been knocked out 10, 15 minutes into a game, and our rounds go 2 hours. So, it stinks. And just being able to put a little 1 next to your thing, at least you got a point from that. It just helps a little bit. You're not going to win a month of League off of Red Shirt points. The wrinkle we have on that point category is that you get +1 per player killed along with you. And what along with you means for our context is in the same turn. So if someone combos off and kills the whole table turn 5, sure, they're going to get a lot of points. But they are going to give, if everyone else who started the game was still in, they're going to give everyone who was killed an extra point for everyone else that was killed at the same time. And so those players aren't necessarily like out of the running for the month because they lost that game. They get a little bit extra, and it's incentive to maybe, not try to blow up the table, but people don't, it doesn't stop anyone from doing it. But people feel better about seeing their point totals at the end of the day and seeing a little bit of a higher number. Even if one of the, because that happened in one of the games.
So yeah, that's a really interesting way of doing it. That's like almost a combination of a few of ours, which is kind of elegant. Like we might look into adapting that. So we do give the extra point for the first person out, like the pity point portion of it. We don't give them extra points if other people were knocked out. However, if someone does knock everybody out in the pod, they get a -1 point.
Okay, so same basic thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then kind of another pity point is if you are the lowest ranked person in a pod in the league, and you're attacked first, then the person who attacked you gets -1. So it basically negates the First Blood.
Huh.
Cool. I tried to do some point things where it looks at either rankings or the round 2 maybe looks at the winners of the round 1 pods, and we sort of played with the idea, but it didn't get voted in. So we vote everything in.
The red shirt is a really nice way to handle kind of those early combo decks, because we've all played against decks that turn 3 everybody's dead. Well, that was cute.
Yeah,
and I like to do it, but.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, in our league, we allow people to play whatever they want. We don't ban cards. Right. We don't ban strategies. If you come in and rock us for a month with a turn 3 deck and we couldn't find an answer for you, more power to you. But it's a free league. And after a month, I usually hope that people will decide that was fun to do that once, but they're not going to have that be the next 6 months of our lives. Because that drives people away.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, this is an elegant way to not encourage bad behavior, which is one of the other top 10 things to not let your point system do that you listed. Like that's without calling it out. I think you're right. Like someone will do it once or twice, and then they'll see there's no advantage in it, so then they'll just kind of naturally move on to something else, I would imagine.
Right. And the way that ours is structured, there is sometimes an advantage to it, and so it makes this very interesting. They have to sit there and make the decision. Okay, if I take out the whole table right now, I'll get this many points because I've already, farmed X number of points. But these people are all going to gain and or I'll lose this amount of points. So it makes them balance out if they want to do something like that for the more competitive people who are, some people are more invested in the points than others. Some people are just there to play,
Yeah, that's always going to be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you were probably going to do the same thing I was, man, so go for it.
Oh, yeah. So you had knockouts listed next, and so that is for player elimination, right?
Absolutely. In EDH, sometimes it's not clear who won a game, like the last person alive won, but, if I outlive everyone else and then kill one person, but someone else killed 3 people, that's kind of more impressive to kill 3 people than kill one person. So knockouts is a way of awarding 2 points per kill or 3 with exact damage. In our current system. And basically if you combo off, sure, you're going to have all those knockout points. But sometimes you can, it's just a different way of sort of wrapping my head around the winning a game.
Yeah.
And you can get points by knocking someone out and still not win the game. And you got those points. So, it gives everyone something to shoot for.
So I think that this is a conversation that we've had a lot, over how do you award points to the winner of a game. And we've talked about doing it this way before, not with the 2 points for Exactsies, but with the 1 point for each person you eliminate. The problem that we ran into, because we have issues with our system too, which is basically just a rank order. If you went out third, you get this many points. If you went out second, but with this one, the one we ran into is, okay, well, let's say I didn't go infinite, but I did 39 damage to everybody. And then you had this other guy next to me had 3 tokens, and then he killed each other player.
Yep.
So he gets the points, even though I did the majority of the work. And so
that's right.
There was some heated discussion about that in our
and there should be. It makes all the sense in the world that people would be a little annoyed if they get points stolen from them.
Yeah.
From our league, it's free. So really, I fall back on it's a system. It's not perfect. We do the best we can. It's free. Didn't put money in. And we've had situations with stuff like mill, where let's say, Andy, I mill you out, but you haven't drawn a card yet. So in our system, if I mill you out, you got nothing in your library. If your turn order comes around and you draw a card naturally, I'll get that knockout. But if Mark goes before you and has a way to force you to draw a card, he's going to get that knockout. And I know that sounds really weird, but it's just a logical interpretation of the system we have. And EDH is such a complicated game with such complicated scenarios that you just sort of have to stick as simple a system out as possible and then try to let it flow naturally into how the points accumulate and not, tie yourself up into knots, creating exceptions and extra rules and all that.
Right.
Now, we kind of lightly touched on most of the other points that you have in the top 10. I don't think we need to go over all of them, but is there anything everyone wants to talk about before, speaking of points, we talk about these gen points? Because I definitely want to touch on gen points here.
Not really.
We can definitely do that.
Okay, so, the gen points are at the very bottom of the PDF you sent me, and again, I'll put that up in the notes for everyone to take a look at. But the Gen 10 cards I'm guessing.
Oh, the Gen.
Is that something different than the Gen points? Because like the Gen 10 cards, these seem like just personalized little things. Well, I mean, I'll stop trying to interpret it. I'll just let you explain it. It just looks like a cool thing.
It sort of is and it isn't. Last year we ran for 11 months and we had point totals at the end of the year. And let me see, I've got it right here. We had 43 weeks of play, 86 total games, 73 players played with us. We had 4,101 Gen points awarded. Whoa. So it's a major part of the system. And the Gen points are awarded, well, we'll get into that in a second, but I totaled up the top 10 Gen point winners, and those top 10 people each chose a card to be able to get extra points from in 2017. So if you play one of these cards that was picked by one of the Gen 10 players, you get an extra point. And the goal was for it to be sort of a silly, fun thing where you're naming a card that's not necessarily great, but that, puts a smile on people's faces, is amusing in some way. If you're familiar with Clergy on Vec, the artwork on that is, well, it's worth looking at. Another one was someone chose One with Nothing because he just thought that was really funny. Yeah. Someone chose a foil because someone found that amusing. My choice was Hammerheim, but because I run the league, I decided to add the caveat that if you play the land Hammerheim, if you say stop, and everyone stops because people stop when you say stop, and then you go Hammerheim, then it's stupid and funny and a reference to MC Hammer, and you got a point for that. So
I feel bad for not seeing that coming.
People find it pretty amusing. I find it pretty amusing, and that's what matters to me. So, but the long and the short of it is that it was a cute idea, and I wanted to reward our top 10 Gen point winners, but it didn't play well this year. So we've been stuck with it all year long, and people do earn points, but it's not used very much. So it's an idea that I used this year. Next year, the top 10 Gen 10 players, the top 10 Gen point winners, are going to be choosing a theme for a month, and from February through November, if your commander matches the theme as identified by looking at the commander card, so we won't be doing deck checks, then you'll get double your tub thumping. And that will give people a way to have something to build around for certain months if you know that a month is going to have elves as the theme. Oh. Or nipples as the theme. Someone suggested nipples. Cards with guys that got their nips showing.
Yeah, that sounds like very appropriate, especially for Commander Cast. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping we'll have some good themes. I'm also hoping we'll have some.
It's actually me
themes.
Right
now. And I'm gonna build around every theme we have next year because I just enjoy deck building. But you don't have to. If you don't, then your tub thumping is at the normal rate, not at the doubled rate. So that's what the Gen 10 cards entry is all about. And we've talked around the idea of Gen points at this point. We should probably explain what they are.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are they and why should you use them?
Okay, so our league point sheet has two columns. It's got a column called Gen points and a column called My points. The My points are the stuff we've been talking about already, where you do stuff in your game and you earn points. You knock someone out, you get knocked out first, whatever. The Gen points are different. What you do in our current system is you have 5 points that you can award to your opponents, and you have to award them to your opponents, and you have to give them to at least 2 of your opponents, and you can give them for any reason you want. I explicitly tell people that I want them to be used for rewarding sportsmanship, for rewarding good plays, for rewarding good decks. But they can be for rewarding funny jokes. They could be for whatever you want. Gen is a reference to Next Gen, which is the store that I run the league in, but it's also short for generosity. So it's a way of saying, no matter how well or badly your game went, you've got to give your opponents some credit. You got to give them some points, and no one can get in your head. No one can tell you, oh, you're wrong for choosing that way. That might mean, you're going to give your girlfriend the maximum number of points, which is 4 each time, because you have to split them amongst 2 people, or at least 2 people. But hopefully people will, do the right thing and try to reward them for good play, for good sportsmanship, for good attitude, for being, give them to the people that you enjoy playing with the most. So it's kind of loosey-goosey, but the result is pretty cool in my opinion. Just looking at the point totals, in 2016, the gen point totals were 4,000 for gen points, and the my point totals were 5,500, or around 5,500. So gen points aren't so prevalent that they overwhelm the my points. So they don't actually really shift the competition of the league. But what happens is if you get someone who comes into the league and they play some, amazing deck and they just, destroy the table. If they do it and they're a jerk about it, you can't win the game if you've lost the game. You already lost. But if the player who combos off is just a really, terrible experience, they're mean, they're whatever, you never want to play with this person again. You never want to see this person again. Normally you're just, too bad. So, it sucks to be you. With the gen points, you have that moment where you can say, from hell's heart, I stab at thee. I will give you 0. You get nothing extra from me. You give your gen points to everyone else. And honestly, that sounds weird, but it makes you feel just a little bit better. Maybe it's petty. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm biased and I'm putting too much into this, but I found that it gives you some agency when you're in a situation in which, you've just been dressed down and destroyed and demoralized and you're just miserable. So being able to choose to give points to people is a powerful thing. And I mean, it's the one thing in our league that for me is non-negotiable. We've had people suggest, let's get rid of those gen points. And I'm also like, no, that's the one thing. I don't want you to ever get destroyed and not have any ability to do anything. At the very least, you can say, nope, I'm not giving you anything. Goose egg for you. That was a miserable experience. And, I give people that combo off and win games points all the time. And lots of other people do too. And some people never give the winner of the table any gen points, but it's a way of giving agency to the players at the table that isn't usually available in most systems, I guess.
Huh. Do you find that a lot of people get salty and decide to goose egg the table for no gen points?
Well, you can't goose egg the table. You have to give out 5 and you have to give them to at least 2 people.
Oh, okay. All right.
But yeah, we get salty players. A good friend who I'm not going to name by name because, it's a little bit of an embarrassing story, but I'm going to tell the story anyway because it's a good story. Right when we first started our league last year, we had someone bring a cake and I was bringing cookies and he was like, I'll bring a cake. And, for what he was particularly, I don't know if he's better now, but he particularly had a problem with getting salty and just getting really mad. And he lost badly. I don't remember what happened. I wasn't in that pod. And he was so mad that before we had the chance to split up the cake and everyone have cake, he took the cake. So, the you take the cake reference, you take the cake, that has special meaning for us in our EDH league. So yeah, we get people who get really salty. I got incredibly pissed off in one game last year, I think. And it was because I had 2 really bad games. And one of the bad games, my kid had the audacity to kill me with Master of Cruelty 10 minutes into, which was just miserable. And, it's like perfectly legal, perfectly legitimate, but I was just so mad. And it wasn't because of just that. It was because I had a bad day all in all. And I was like, I drove us home, dropped him off, and I went off to a game store to look at cards for a while because I didn't want to be around anyone. I was so pissed off. And it happens. If you're invested in the game and you care about the outcome, you care about having a fun, interesting, competitive game, you're going to get salty sometimes. And sometimes it's nothing to do with your opponent. Sometimes it's just that you're pissed that your deck just did not behave and you don't know what's wrong with it.
Yeah, and sometimes the bad game is just the frosting on the cake.
Yep.
Yeah. But you have to accept that if you're going to be running an EDH league because it goes with the territory. It's you can't avoid it. And there's no magic way to get rid of it. You just have to do what you can to keep the attitudes relaxed and keep everyone focused on having fun and play pickup games after or in between rounds or after rounds if you didn't get enough games in and they just didn't go well. And then maybe you'll get a good game in from the pickup games. And one of the reasons we do 2 rounds every week, in part because we have the time, is that I don't want anyone to have a terrible, terrible game and not be able to play another one. We want 2 rounds so that if your first round just sucks and you're just pissed, you can at least maybe have a good round 2.
Yeah, that is the worst. I think we've all been in the situation where we've gone to name the event, right? Whether it's Commander games or if it's just a sealed or if it's just a draft or something. You just have 1 or 2 crappy games and you leave on that sour note. most of the time I don't come back the next week. Like it takes a little while to wash that taste out of my mouth.
Or if you sit down and play with someone and they just destroy you, and then you say, "Okay, I want to do another one," and they say, "Oh no, I'm good." It's like, what? What about me? Do I get to have some fun?
Yep.
So yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. Well, to round out this discussion of leagues, we haven't talked about it yet, but I think you can't talk about EDH leagues without prize support or pay-in. So, what do you guys do? I mean, I know you said it was a free league, and it's kind of bragging rights for your point system and whatnot. But Adam, maybe you guys have some prize support in your league. I'm not quite sure, or I don't know if you guys pay into a pot.
Yeah, we do, but it's still all in like the name of fun, and we only paid in the first year to pay for the eternal prize. So we have a trophy, and it is nickel bolus, one of those pop vinyl nickel boluses put on top of an actual like trophy with the wooden bottom and the plaque on the front and everything like that. And we all pitched in, I don't know, $5-10 the first year that we did it. And then every league that we run, we only do about 2 months. Because we start off with the base commander decks and then make changes. And whoever has the most points at the end of that gets the trophy at their house, kind of like a Stanley Cup thing,
Mm-hmm.
You get to keep it at your house. It stays there until, the next winner of the next league.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It's nice.
Yeah. Steve, you guys, I'm assuming, don't do any kind of prize support for your leagues?
Well, at the end of the year, actually, what I've been doing, I did last year, is I bought a bunch of command towers and I printed out an overlay that had the person's name and the thing that they won, like top gen points total or highest, average total points or whatever. And I printed that out and put it in a sleeve on top of the command tower and gave that as the prize. So, I can afford that, and, it's not going to break my pocketbook. And it's something. I wanted to do something. But generally, yeah, it's bragging rights. And to my mind, if you have a pay-in every week, it's really, really hard to avoid getting the slide towards more and more competitive play. If you're paying in $10 and you get $5 out of everyone's entry fee if you win, it's impossible not to tell people. And it's not reasonable to try to tell people not to bring their best decks.
I mean, sure, you can't talk people out of economic incentives, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And in a free league, I also tell people you can bring your tier 1, do it, kick our asses. If that is fun for you, cool. And there's nothing wrong with competitive leagues. There's nothing wrong with pay-in leagues, not at all. But for my league, I like having that layer of casualness that makes it a place where anyone can show up and probably have a good time. You can bring your pre-con. You can not know what you're doing. And, we actually have a system in place for takebacks. So if you screw something up really badly and you have unanimous consent at the table, you can take a -1 penalty, take it back. It's okay. People are learning. Not everyone is great at this game. And it's a complicated game with complicated board states. So we built in a way to handle that. And I always want our league to be a place where people can show up and have a good time and be competitive, even if they're not, a top tier player. So that's sort of where my mind is at. But again, I don't mean to shit on competitive leagues. If you want to play competitive league, play competitive league. Absolutely. Just be honest about it and tell people what to expect. And if they come and get the dick stomped, if they only paid $5, well, pay $5 for the pleasure.
I mean, I can understand that. I mean, maybe if I won't take a big snarly shit on EDH leagues, but I will throw some shade their way, because to me, competitive EDH still sounds like an oxymoron. Like, just that sentence just rings weirdly in my brain. There's somebody around me who keeps trying to talk me into doing it. I guess there's a new game store that opened up around me, and they started up a competitive EDH league. And I'm like, why would I don't understand why I would do that. But
I think it's one of the things that I try to keep in mind with EDH in general, but also EDH league play, is I think you have to expect to lose a lot of games. And that sounds like super pessimistic, but it's a multiplayer format and everyone's bringing it. You can't expect someone else to go easy just because you're trying to play a dumb casual. I've got a Horde of Notions deck for this month for an excuse to play Augment Host cards. And, Horde of Notions looks like it's a big mash of things anyways, on the card, the artwork. And it's a terrible deck, and when I play it, I know I'm going to just get trounced. But, it's still fun. I still like trying to, and I can't force people to play bad decks against me just so I could play my bad deck. So, you have to go in with the understanding that sometimes you're going to play your mid-range deck or your bad deck and you're just going to get crushed. But, accepting that is a big part of trying to avoid getting salty later on.
Yeah, no, well said, I think. Any other last-minute things we want to talk about as far as designing and implementing a league? I mean, I think we did a pretty good comprehensive discussion of this already. But are there any last-minute things that you think you want to add on top before we head into technology?
Sure. I have a sheet that I created for our next-gen league, but I've actually made a template that's sort of like a blank version of that sheet with some spots where people can write in their own things and with the Next Gen Comics logo missing, and sort of genericized, made generic, for anyone to be able to use. And I did that like maybe a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to try to get that out there for anyone that wants to check it out and try to start up an EDH league. One of the hardest things is actually doing the desktop publishing and the layout and making the league sheet look good, look not too intimidating, look simple, and have everything you need on it so that it could be just grabbed and used. And I'm going to try to get that out there. I'll send you guys a PDF so you can post it somewhere.
That's great.
If you want, I'll make a Commander Cast version for you guys to use if that's something you want to do. Not because I want to promote my system or promote Commander Cast, although I'm certainly happy to do that, but just because I think it's a great system that I would love to see more people try. And now's the time, because we're about to go into January. You can start up a monthly free league somewhere and have a lot of fun in 2018. And it's not that hard. You just got to show up and do it.
Nice. Huh. All right, folks. Well, I think if that neatly wraps up the strategy segment, we're going to put a bow on this one and come back and talk about technology right after the break.
I think the weird thing about the technology segment is that every system is going to have different things that are openings to get more points out of it. So it's hard to make a universal list, but I think we could talk around a bunch of ideas and probably fill up some time.
I mean, even if I'd just be interested in hearing how you use Tana the Bloodsower just in that particular, in your league, because that's a card that I look at and I'm like, okay, well, I don't know. Aside from Trample and the fact that it's Gruul, I got nothing for this card.
Okay, I will tell you why it's amazing. It involves Sidar Kondo.
So, okay, there we go. All right, I'm good with that. There's another. The only card out of our flanking show that I'll probably end up trying. So. And in the technology segment this week, folks, we're going to talk about some cards and strategies to best farm points. Now, I know that each league and every league out there is going to be a little bit different, so we're going to talk in kind of broad generalities. But if you guys out there have any, ideas about this or anything you want to add to the list, or certain cards that work well in your league, that would be a cool thing to put in the comments this week too. But let us talk about Steve's first pick, because Steve, I have wanted to play this card for a long time, and honestly, I don't have, this is a card I look at, and it looks cool to me, but I have no use for it, and I can't see a use case. So sell me on Tana the Bloodsower.
Sure. So Tana the Bloodsower is one of the partner commanders from 2016. She costs, I think, 2 and a red and a green. Yep. And she's a 4/4 with trample, that when she does combat damage to a player, she makes that many saplings. So when I saw this card, I immediately went and I printed out copies of all the partners, and I walked around with these proxies for days just trying to figure out what the best combinations were. And eventually I figured upon Tana and Sidar Kondo of Jamura. And Sidar Kondo lets any creature you have that's power 1 or 2 be unblockable unless your opponent has a creature with flying or reach, I think. So basically, Tana swings, can't be blocked except by a flyer, and she'll make saplings that can't be blocked except by flyers, because the saplings are 1/1s. So in a point system like ours, we have this section called Size Matters. And size matters is a thing you look at the end of the game. and you get points for who had the most of certain things. So who had the creature with the most power, the creature with the most toughness, the largest army, the highest life total, etc. And with Tana and Sidar, what happens is you get a lot of combat damage in, and you get to do combat tricks, because in my build, you swing, you can't be blocked unless they've got flyers, and then after blockers are declared, you pump. So it's full of instant speed pump. So you've got your 4/4. Okay, not a big deal. Oh, you can't block her. Oh, that's too bad for you. Okay, well, I'm sorry, but she's now a 12. And next thing you know, you got this huge board. And it became one of my most successful decks at the time. I loved it. But it was also really good at farming points. And then a guy in our league named Dave, who's a good friend and is a fantastic player, a fantastic deck builder, he saw me play that deck and thought, I can do better than that, because Sidar's cute and Steve likes combat tricks, but I think I can do more. So he built Tana with a ton of just really hardcore Voltron stuff. Pump, pump, pump. She's got trample. He goes after the first person that doesn't have blockers or doesn't have a death touch blocker and just pumps the crap out of her. And the next thing you know, he's got this board that's just insane. So that's an example of a way to take a point system, and you're still playing EDH. You're not taking your deck and contorting it to hit certain weird point categories. You're still basically playing EDH and doing everything normal, but you're angling towards certain things to try to get points, to try to then accumulate the highest point total for the month. Yeah. So, I think the world of Tana. She's amazing. But not just thrown in any deck. You gotta build around her.
Now, in your deck specifically, do you think you have to have both her and Sidar Kondo out? Because, a 2/2 with trample, it really ain't doing it for me, Or is it just like the speed you get her out? Like,
is she a 2/2 or a 4/4?
She's a 2/2.
2/2.
My bad.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
I got too many decks, so if I don't play one in a while. You're right. 2/2 with trample doesn't sound good, but the whole build for Tana is around pumping her up, whether it's by equipment or instant speed. And I really enjoy combat tricks. I really enjoy the idea of, if I've got, with my Tana and Sidar, I'll swing with her, even if I only pump her a little bit, I'll give her +3. Boom. Okay. Now I've got 5 Saproings. Okay. So I swing with my 5 Saproings. You can't block them. Okay. There's a Rally the Peasants, I think it is, that you pay 2 in a red and then it flashes back for like 2 in a white maybe. But, so you get your board of, 5 Saplings, swing, and then you pump it +2 and you pump it +2 again. Now you're doing 30 damage. So, it can go from an unassuming board to dead players, remarkably fast. It's not a tier 1 deck, but for a mid-range deck, I found it to be a lot of fun. And that's why I play Sidar, so that I can have that extra fun, angle of the instant speed combat tricks. Sort of like Zada has, this whole build around instant speed combat tricks to do fun stuff.
Hey, that's a cool idea. Like, I'm a big advocate of combat tricks and EDH anyway, because they're so underplayed. I think at least in my area and in my experience, most people kind of like look down their nose at combat tricks, like, whatever, that's something I use in limited, and
they probably should, because they're one and done.
Yeah, right? Like, it's fun. Not good card advantage. Like, specifically card disadvantage. But you never know, like, playing at the right time. And like, when was the last time? First of all, if someone ever blew me out with Rally the Peasants, fucking A, man, like, I'd give you gen points. Like, that's amazing.
My kid and I drove down to Pennsylvania 2 years ago, and we did a road trip where we stopped at LGS's on the way. And we stopped at this LGS in New Jersey, I think. And I don't remember the name. Maplewood Hobby, maybe? But, we went in, and the guys, there weren't a lot of cards there, and there were a bunch of guys playing cards, and I looked at their decks and I was like, "Oh, you guys are playing Standard?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah." And I said, "Oh, we're big Commander players." And their eyes lit up. "You guys play Commander?" And I explained, we're on this road trip. We're going down to Pennsylvania to visit my parents. And they said, "Oh, we gotta play." So they took us upstairs, and we proceeded to play a 4-player game of EDH with them. And I brought a bunch of decks, and I showed them, this is what I've got here. I've got, my Narset deck is probably my best deck. It's a little bit of a glass cannon, but it can really open up a can of whoop ass. And they looked at it and said, no, I don't want to play against Narset, man. Fuck that. And so I said, okay, well, here's my Sidar and Tana deck. It's one of those partner commanders. And one of the guys grabbed it and said, "Oh, let me take a look at this." And he started shuffling through it. And he was like, oh yeah, that's fine. And I was like, oh, really? So he was like, "Yeah, that's nothing. No problem. I'll play against that all day long." And so I proceeded to win the game from combat tricks and doing dumb crap. I think I got a Spawn Writhe out and swung and made 2 Spawn Writhes and then swung and made 4 Spawn Writhes.
Yeah,
and
now we're talking.
it just got worse from there.
Yeah.
Unblockable thanks to Sidar. But yeah, no, it's a lot of fun and it flies under the radar, both literally and figuratively. Those guys will get in unblocked a lot of the time, and people don't expect it.
Very cool. Huh. Well, you know what? If nothing else, Steve, I don't know if you sold me on leagues, but you definitely sold me on making a Tana and a Sidar deck. So.
Yeah, no, I've played against that combo deck before, and it's it's not bad, and it's certainly fun to watch.
And it's mid range. It's not a top tier deck.
Yeah, and I feel like I could probably make that deck from like stuff I have lying around. Like,
most likely.
Yeah, like how many copies of old draft chaff do I have lying around that I could probably put together in Naya colors, like 1,000 cards. So
I have a huge thing for decks that play fair. I've got decks that don't play fair, but I really love one of my buddies, Zach, in the league. He and I are like brothers from another mother. Like we share a brain sometimes, and we both love duking it out on the battlefield. And to me, like, it's not like high range, like, high skill EDH, but it's still so much fun to just get in there and just smash the creatures together. It's kind of dumb, but it's fun. It's like a guilty pleasure.
Well, I mean, if you came to any place to talk about dumb fun, Commander Cast would be it. So, Adam, what's your first pick for technology this week?
So my first one is the unfortunate has become an auto include in everyone's deck in our league, which is Maze of Ith. So because we have something similar to the bodyguard point that Steve has, we have a lot of people trying to just barely squeak somebody out to live. And Maze of Ith is usually the thing that does it. And it's just a political tool at that point where you're just like, I can hose you or I can let you have that point. Which one do you... we might need to talk here. So this has been put in literally everyone's deck. It's one of the primary cards that we've talked about banning because of that.
Really?
Oh, don't go there.
Yeah,
wow.
Just because it allows you to, it specifically allows you to farm points. And, some of us are a little more anti that than others, but we have not made a modified ban list at all. We've kept it the same. So yeah, Maze of Ith, and for those of you who don't know what it does, it's a land. You can tap it, untap target attacking creature, prevent all combat damage that creature would be dealt or dealt by that creature this turn. It's a great card. I mean, it belongs in a lot of EDH decks to begin with.
I mean, it used to be an auto-include pretty much. I think it's only fallen off in recent years as an auto-include. It definitely used to be, like, especially when this cast started.
Right. But yeah, and it's, it's a very good card, but it becomes kind of an annoying card. It's like, once like 3 people have Maze of Iths out, it's like, okay, well, killing anybody is literally a, ask the council if I'm allowed to do it kind of thing.
Now, Adam, do you have the ability to get multiple bodyguard points from the same person that's being saved?
No, any one person is only ever allowed to get 1 bodyguard point per game.
That's not so bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that still becomes that much of a problem. With just that? You can only get 1 per game and still...
because after they get their point, they still, it's still a will of the council kind of situation. Well, I don't want you to win.
Adam, tell us true. Do you have a lot of whiny players that wish everything was banned because they can't get their way and can't do their stuff all the time?
No.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
No, we don't have a lot of people asking for bans. I mean, even in our regular games, the only thing that's really ever been up for discussion of banning is Sol Ring.
Huh.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Well, that's
and I think we're all of 2 minds there. Like, I don't know. I like it when I draw Sol Ring. But, it's busted
it's a staple.
I mean, you put your finger on the entire Magic community, right?
Right, so, exactly.
Now, do you have any ban cards in your league, Adam?
Nothing other than the normal ban list.
Okay, good for you.
Yeah.
It's good to play Commander. I mean, that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Right,
even with our 13 Infect, I still feel like for the most part we're playing Commander.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't ask. I mean, I assume I know the answer already based on what you just said, Steve. But you guys follow the normal rules committee ban list as well?
Absolutely. We've had occasional times where people talk about banning cards, and we have one card right now that's in effect banned because someone got voted in a rule that if you take more than 2 extra turns in a row, you get a -5 per extra turn after that, and that takes expropriate, and it makes it a way for the table to just screw you point wise.
Yep. Yeah.
So, I didn't vote for that rule change, but it's democracy. You let people vote. So,
yeah. And we also have the same thing. Yeah. You lose 1 point per turn taken after your second extra turn. My phrasing is poor there, but yeah, like we do the same thing.
Yeah.
Actually, we have a thing where all your turns have to take 10 minutes anyways. So, our big argument against that rule, my big argument against that rule, was that it doesn't matter if you do 8 turns. I've got an Arsa deck. I can flow into extra turns. As long as I take them all within a 10-minute stretch, no one should have the right to complain. I'm not taking their whole day. I'm just doing my thing. Boom, 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 boom. I'll go as fast as I can, and then next person.
Do you guys have a chess clock or something?
If I haven't, I didn't waste your whole afternoon.
I'm sorry, I talked over you on that one, Steve. Do you guys have like a chess clock or something that you take? Like, do you like it straight up a stopwatch, or you just look at the clock?
It's weird. It's written down that your turns can't take. It's written down that you have a 10-minute turn limit, but generally we don't want people taking all their time working on. We don't want that to intrude upon the game. So usually people don't put anyone on the clock. We just play, we have fun. It's not a problem. If you know that there's someone who's going to take a turn that's probably going to be bad, someone usually looks up and says, okay, you're on the clock. It's, 2:38. You've got until 2:48. And then they try to get their stuff done in time. But usually it's pretty loosey-goosey.
Yeah.
Interesting. I was curious because my mind was thinking if that's a turn clock, right? Or does that lead to certain deck construction rules? Like you wouldn't mess around with top of the library manipulation or something like that, or et cetera. But I guess it turns out not to be that much of an issue. So.
Well, you're not going to play eggs. You're not going to play something that literally takes 30 minutes to do your turn.
Yeah. No, as the guy who plays eggs, I can understand that. I'm also really slow anyway, so because most of the time I'm not paying attention, or I'm just laughing or making dick jokes or something. So that's not like eggs isn't a good strategy for me anyway, but I like it. So
yeah.
Anyway, what's your next category or your next card in this category, Steve?
So I was gonna go Maze of Ith, but Adam grabbed that first, for the same reason. But I put in Fog because for the same reason, when you have a system like ours and Adam's where you're bodyguarding, getting a Fog out in certain decks, someone goes to, I had a situation, last year, I think last fall, where there was an opponent that I could have killed, but someone else went to kill him first. And I knew I had enough flyers to be able to get through. So I fogged. And Dave couldn't kill the guy. And unfortunately, the guy played another flyer and I couldn't kill him either. But basically, you use ways to suppress combat damage as a way to try to get the kill in. You sort of steal the kill. Okay, well, that person's at 2. You're going to kill him? Yeah, no, you're not. And that's my kill. Thank you very much. And people get mad when you do that, but it's part of the game. You're allowed to do that. And Maze of Ith and the new flip card that does the same thing are fantastic ways to get that done. But so are fogs. If you get a fog on an Ice Crown Scepter, you can have a lot of fun.
It's a pretty good day.
It makes for long games, though.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite fog?
I think Constant Mists is pretty good.
Yeah.
Yep.
That one's
it's hard to argue with that.
Yeah. I was just noticing because I know you had under the Gen 10 points, someone had Darkness out.
Yeah, someone has Darkness out. That's a guy that he played a lot with us in 2016. Didn't play as much with us this year, but he's a good guy. He tends to build decks, or tended to build decks that were sort of trollish and would mess with people. So he loved playing Darkness because it would just piss people off. They'd think they'd be good. Oh, I'm just playing against a mono black player. What are they going to do? Yep, Darkness.
The best.
Yeah.
It's the Spanish Inquisition of Magic cards. It's
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. So, Adam, what's your last card in this category?
So my last card is Sylvan Library, and you can honestly put anything. I was torn between that and Top, but the reason for this is because we don't have a turn time limit, but we do have a tutor time limit. You have 30 seconds to tutor.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty cool. Huh.
So, and it's partially because we have had people in the past who are like, oh, I'm gonna like who have played like Sisei and have no idea what they're tutoring for at the end of your turn.
That's not good.
No.
Every single turn, and it's like, no, we're not. We're like, we need to move these games along so we can actually fit in enough to make the league relevant. So we did that. So cards like Sylvan Library are a little bit more advantageous because 30 seconds is a little tight, even sometimes if you know what you're looking for. But so in League, I tend to run a few less tutors, but a few more card draw, card selection type things like Sylvan Library, so that I don't get penalized for that.
Interesting. I mean, I'm never going to say no to a Sylvan Library anyway, right? Like, definitely one of my favorite cards in Magic. So, really glad it got the reprint in Eternal Masters now too. Like when it was cresting like around $30, that's a little bit too much for me. But like the 16 and change it's going for right about now, yep, I'm down with that. So
it's actually a card I don't have yet.
Oh,
or not. I have 21 decks, and when I first started getting into EDH, I had a sort of a strange experience where my kid and I would go to the game store and. He'd be buying $5 to $10 cards, and because I wasn't really serious about the format yet, I'd be buying 10-cent cards, 25-cent cards, and he kept on kicking my ass. Just every game. It was so hard to ever win a game. Finally, I started being like, I should probably pay $5 for that. It'll actually make the deck good. And slowly my realization that I had to pony up a little bit of dough to be able to compete. Got the better of me, and I started buying better cards, and eventually I built a Narset deck with extra turns, and it's got a Mana Crypt and a Mana Vault, and I actually bought half decent lands. It's not $1,000 land base, but it's not, a $50 land base either.
Right.
And Sylvan Library is on my list of cards. So I know it's good, but it's a little expensive, and I just haven't gotten around to getting one for any of my green decks. So thanks for the reminder. I got to go get one.
Yeah, it's a pretty mainstay in most people's green decks in our groups.
Oh yeah,
I don't put it in every single one.
No, I don't think it's an auto include. Yeah, but it's definitely like one of those cards that like you should probably own. Like if you've been playing for a long time and you invest in it. One of these days we should probably do like a cards worth investing in segment. Like cause some of them like I constantly look at Mana Crypt. I'm just way too cheap to buy one, but like I know I should just buy that card.
Well, I've got one of each, the Crypt of the Vault, and I don't proxy. I'm like a hard line, no proxy. I'll just lose with my bad deck, then mess with that. And it's so tempting, though. It's so tempting to be like, oh yeah, every one of my decks has one in it. Yeah, sure it does. But right. I just can't go there.
Yeah,
because I don't like losing to those decks, so I'm not going to proxy myself. You know what I mean?
I have nothing against proxies, but I just find it obnoxious to play with the same cards over and over again.
Oh yeah, that too. How do you build a range of deck powers if every deck has all the best cards because you're proxying them all? Then every deck's amazing, and you can't deal with toning down to like a precon.
Exactly. Yeah. The one exception to that is Soul Ring, right? Because that's literally in almost every single deck ever.
Staple, though.
Yeah, and that's one of those weird things. It's like, and like everyone has their pet staples. Like like we went over before. Like I can't not put Sun Titan in a deck that runs white. Like it's just something. It's inside me. I can't stop it.
Well, that's because you're right.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any decks without Soul Ring?
Actually, yeah. I have several decks without Soul Ring. Mostly because I'm bad at building decks, and sometimes I just forget.
No, you're not.
So
there's got to be a reason there somewhere.
I do not.
I actually have
Soul Ring.
I have a Ramos Dragon Engine deck that doesn't have a Soul Ring because it won't give Ramos
fair enough.
Yep.
And I think I didn't put one in my Rurik Thar because I didn't ever want to have to draw it and then be like, is this worth 6 life? So
yeah, that's fair. I have a Naya Beasts only deck that like Beasts can't use artifacts, so it's like artifact hate. So that's
points for theme. Good.
Yeah, so that's why I just can't put it in there because. So I put some stupid beast theme, whatever. I don't know. I love that Magic had like beast themes back in the day, and they were just the most god awful stupid decks ever. Like they're just really dumb cards, but I like them.
Yeah, I had a whole bunch of beast cards from the Mael Marath recon. And for the longest time, I was like, I should really do something with these, but I just never did. They just never seemed like they were going to be good enough.
Oh, they're not. Like, well, let me disabuse you of that right now. Like, that is not a good deck. My mana curve starts at like 5, I think.
Okay, you want to hear about big piles of jank? I got the Mael Marath. I didn't build Marath because we had a player that played Marath in our LGS, and I was like, no, I don't want to build that because he's already got it. I built Mael, and when the Kalemne Giants tribal deck came out, I took my Mael deck, which had a bunch of crap in it, and put all those Giants in there, and had a Mael Giants deck. And if you remember how bad the Kalemne deck was, it was not good. It was hot trash.
I mean, hey, Steve, points for at least not building the Gahiji deck. So,
I did build the Gahiji deck.
Oh.
And, it was bad. It was all Pillow Fort and crap. But then I turned it into a Corona the False God, Pillow Fort. I call it Corona Don't Kill Me. And the whole point is to put those enchantments, those auras that make her not able to attack you, or assault suit so she can't attack you.
Mm-hmm.
And basically play Corona and give her to everyone else and not die from her. That's the point of the deck. It's a big pile of crap, but it's fun.
Hey, that's way better than anything Gahiji has ever done. So,
yeah. But it's Pillow Fort, please don't die.
Yeah.
I like it.
But I can't survive against like a fast combo deck. We've got a guy in our league who, in our play group at home, 2 guys who have Mikaeus combo decks. And half the time when they play, I'm just like, all right, I'll just be sitting here, playing lands and just tell me when I'm dead. And next thing you know, Triskelion, boom, you're dead. It's not the hardest thing about EDH, and this is important with leagues. This pertains to the conversation about leagues. The hardest thing about EDH is getting a play group together where everyone is going to play decks that are roughly at the same power level so that everyone has a chance to have fun. There's no guarantee you'll have fun, but you really want an atmosphere where no one's showing up knowing that they're absolutely going to lose every game. There's no question.
Right. Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard. But, the times where it works and you have these. Last week I had a 2-hour-long game with the Big Idea, Aractos Unstable deck, and it's a hidden Perforos deck. So the goal is to get Perforos out and do do ETB damage. And it was 2 hours long. I won in the end from a flashback Army of the Damned with Perforos on the table. So bad. 13 zombies enter, everyone dies. And it was great. It was everyone's at the same power level, pretty much. Everyone had dumb shit in their deck. And just, it was constant struggle, twists and turns. And in the end, I got the win, but it wasn't, it was basically like the last possible second. We had gone to 2 hours. Everyone was on their extra turn. And I happened to have a Grinning Ignis on the field. And Grinning Ignis can bounce back to your hand and give you mana.
Yeah.
That was the thing that let me seal the game.
Huh.
And if I had lost, it would have been fine because it was just such a great game.
Interesting. That is interesting.
So yeah, power, deck level balance is just such a key component of EDH. And in league play, when you have people coming in and you don't know who they are, you're going to have those games where it's just not going to work. One person has good deck, everyone has bad decks. They roll you, and you just got to lick your wounds and move on. It's just the way it goes.
Yep. No, it's like the point you brought up before about you just have to get used to losing. Like,
oh yeah.
Do the math. If you're a 1-4, 1-5 pod, like, if you win 20 to 25% of the time, that's probably about on average.
Yep.
So that means you're going to lose 75 to 80% of the time.
And you can go weeks without winning.
Yeah,
it feels bad. But it's just the way it goes.
Yeah. Hey, you gotta take your licks and kind of keep on trucking. So. To round out the technology, does anybody have any other last-minute cards they want to talk about?
I think that's it for me.
Sweet. All right. Well, again, I have nothing to add to this conversation, so that sounds pretty good. But people in the comment section, if you guys have any cards or strategies to best farm points in your own leagues, make sure that you let us know. And with that, we're going to just kind of smooth on into the outro. Steve, was there anything you want to put down for guest contact?
Sure. You can find me on gatheringmagic.com. Starting now. It was going to start in 2018 under the Commander Ruminations post, or header. And I'm on email at ardentscribbler@gmail.com. So ardentscribbler, all one word, @gmail.com. And I am happy to help anyone out there that is interested in forming up an EDH league. I will be glad to send you off a copy of the league point system template that I've worked up, and I will even put your logo on it and make a version for you. I won't spend countless hours customizing your sheets, but I will put a lot into trying to help you guys get set up. So I am a resource for anyone out there who wants to get one going.
Nice. All right. Adam, if people want to tell you, I don't know, how unnecessary Sylvan Library is, they would be wrong. But where could they reach you?
You can hit me up on Twitter at Squire9999 or at the Trinisphere.
Very nice. And as usual, folks, if you want to hit us up, you can blast us all out at commandercast@gmail.com or on Twitter at commandercast. And be sure to check out our CommanderCast Facebook page as well. So a big thanks to everyone here at the CommanderCast Network, and of course, happy holidays, because 'tis that time of year. So we'll see you guys next week with more community, strategy, and technology. So until then, let's get it!